Now,
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the second session of our ESG-nomics webinar series on net zero. My name is Abhishek. I'm a partner with GT Bharat and I lead the ESG practice at the firm. And today I'll be the moderator for the session. It's a privilege to host a discussion on such an important topic that is not only shaping the future of our planet, but also redefining business sustainability across industries. The journey to net zero is not just filled with challenges, but also with immense opportunities. Today's discussion will provide you with insights on net zero, leveraging technology for accurate carbon tracking, measurement, and calculation, and the outlook on the evolving regulatory landscape on net zero, around net zero. We'll also discuss the key takeaways from the recently concluded COP29. We have a panel of experts who will share their thoughts and experiences to help you navigate this complex and dynamic space. So let me start with introducing the panelists. I'm happy to introduce Mr. Manish Kumar from ICICI Bank. Manish is a chartered accountant with 30 years experience in manufacturing and banking and has been with the ICICI Bank Group for over 25 years now, of which 12 years were spent in international risk management. Manish heads ESG and CSR at ICICI Bank and is also an active member of the SEBI's ESG Advisory Committee. Additionally, Manish participates as a speaker in several ESG and CSR related forums and events across the country, length and breadth of the country. Our next panelist is Amit Kumar. Amit is a partner and the climate ecosystem leader at GT Bharat. Amit specializes in helping organizations define and execute their net zero strategies. With extensive experience in sustainability and decarbonization, Amit has worked with not just leading corporates to align their goals and with climate commitments, but also with international development agencies both in India and outside of India. Amit will share practical strategies to kickstart and advance the net zero efforts. Next, we have Mr. Jango Dalal, who's the co-founder of and CEO of GovEVA. GovEVA is a leading digital ESG platform that empowers enterprises, companies manage and streamline their sustainability initiatives digitally. With leadership experience at Avaya, D-Link, and Cisco, Django brings strategic vision and operational expertise. His leadership at GovEVA is marked by a focus on integrating technology with sustainability to drive an impactful change in the corporate world. Django today will provide key insights on how digital tools are accelerating the net zero journey. And last but not the least, we have Debraj Datta. Debraj is an associate director with GT Bharat and specializes in ESG and net zero strategy. So today, Debraj will be discussing on how to align net zero goals with ESG principles and how this could drive value for businesses and stakeholders alike. To start, let's explore on why net zero matters for businesses today. India has made commitments to address the climate change, including achieving net zero by 2070, which has also been affirmed by our Honorable Prime Minister. While businesses will face challenge, but this will also present an opportunity for them to lead the transformation towards a sustainable future. So before we dive into details and get to the discussion, we would like to do a quick poll and I can request my colleague Mamta to conduct the same. Over to you, Mamta.
Thank you, Abhishek. Good afternoon to our esteemed panelists and the wonderful audience. So we would like to now hear from our audience, what are some of the key challenges you face in your organization while working on the net zero strategies. So you can see a poll on your screen now. We would request you to please select the options which resonates with your experience in your organization. So please go ahead and choose one or multiple options from here. I would request our audience to participate. Can we have the results on the screen, please? Thank you so much to everyone for your active participation. And the top three challenges which you have highlighted here are lack of clear strategy or roadmap. Second is difficulty in measuring and tracking carbon emissions. And third is high cost of transitioning to clean energy or technology. And we hope to address these points today in our discussion and shed some light on this and provide you insights which will be helpful for you. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions or queries during the panel discussion, we would request you to post it on the chat box, and our panelists would be happy to address those towards the end of the webinar. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Mamta. So, Amit, let me start with you. Why, what do you think, in your opinion, why are Indian businesses today striving for net zero, and what would be the some of the most pressing challenges they would face when they initiate or embark this journey?
Thanks, Abhishek, and good afternoon, everyone. Very pertinent given the poll which we have received. So that means, there are multiple things where the organizations feel that, issues are there. So, Abhishek, I'll start saying that, net zero is not something which is just a global environmental aspect, right? Even in India, and not only for MNCs, even for domestic firms, it is a priority now. It's a business priority for almost everyone now, whether it is large industry, medium, or even small scale industries also. And there are visible impacts of the climate change on all of them, whether it is due to taxation like CBAM on steel, fertilizer, and others which are coming up, or because they want to be clean, green, or there are compliance related issues like ESG. So companies, what we are seeing is they are facing increasing scrutiny from three stakeholders: A, investors, those who are listed; regulators; and third is the customers. Now there are customers who also want to, buy products which are clean green, and there are of course funding agencies, financial institutions, banks, and particularly the GCFs of this world who are only looking to land for green kind of projects. The challenges, as we have seen in the poll, are significant. So landscape, if you see from India's energy perspective, it is still heavily, focused on coal. Something like 70% of the total energy consumption, right? Not in terms of capacity. I'm saying from the electricity consumption is still coming from coal. 70%, roughly around 70%. There have been long, kind of steps which we have taken both from policymakers perspective or even industries. We have invested a lot in solar, wind, hydro, but they will take time. At the same time, a lot of investment will go into mainstreaming of many of these renewable energy. So whether it is storage, both from batteries or pumped storage, which is going to increase the cost a bit. At the same time, large investment is required, large capex is required to achieve that objective. Now, third aspect, as I said, large capex are required. So financial constraints, even now, are another significant hurdle. And with the estimated cost of India's transition, one estimate says is in trillions of dollars. That is what the estimate is from IEA. And technological gaps in energy storage or in grid management, as we say, and new technologies. Now, green hydrogen is something which is required for hard to abate sectors, right? Otherwise, the net zero and the decarbonization aspect will not be fulfilled. New technology like carbon capture and storage, where we are working with ADB and IOC, we are seeing that that also is a requirement in few of the sectors where the net zero achievement is to be done. Now, despite these challenges, there are challenges, as I said, but we know that as to what the solution is, whether in terms of technology or in terms of financing also. So I think the journey towards net zero, it presents a significant opportunities. For a country like India, there is an advantage because we have not reached a stage where we have to replace something. We have to create a new, and that's why the opportunity is quite significant and can be achieved. So India is, for example, the third largest already the producer of renewable energy. 42% in terms of capacity is coming from the clean sources. And we all know this 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. And if you add another 125 megawatt for green hydrogen, 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen, then it is something like 625. So every year, as we say, 50 to 60 gigawatt of renewable energy has to be added in the system, right? And I think the government and all the stakeholders, they are coming out with tenders after tender. Industries are taking their own action in terms of captive renewable. So I think there are a lot of actions which is already happening in this. So hydrogen mission, most of us know about it. It was launched in 2021, 5 million metric ton. Recently, there was a Chintan Shiv in Odisha where government and we at the Grant Thornton, we were the moderators for these 2 day session. And there is a lot of thing which the government is coming out. There is a lot of excitement among the industry, those who are going to set it up, both for domestic consumption as well as for export. And also, I'll say in the end that innovative solutions and strategic investments, this is the key. And that's why the industries are looking for B2B collaboration within India and most importantly, even from abroad as well. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Amit. That provided a solid foundation. Now let's get some insights from Manish. Manish, you've been at the forefront of sustainability, or rather driving sustainability in your sector. Could you share some examples of how companies in your industry are treating net zero, both as a challenge and as an opportunity, both for innovation and a growth?
Okay, thanks, Abhishek, and I have to thank the organizers for including me as a panelist here. I think this is a very forward-looking topic that we are discussing today, and timing-wise, it's the right time. The kind of focus India is putting on the carbon, driving the economy to low carbon. So in terms of opportunities and challenges, of course, Amit did allude to a lot of areas. From a banking and financial sector perspective, I would like to specifically talk about some of the challenges that we are seeing in the industry. The first one is with regard to understanding the GHG protocol, corporate accounting and reporting standard, which provides the requirements and guidance for preparing the GHG emissions inventory. So any roadmap to net zero has to start with inventorization of the areas which cause the emissions. And currently, this is the particular standard which is available. So understanding the standard, understanding the nitty-gritties of how concepts have to be uh, interpreted is one of the big challenges. One of the important factors for determining the emissions is operational control. And operational control determines whether a particular emission is part of scope 1 and scope 2 or is it scope 3. So, for example, in a bank, a significant part of the operations is undertaken at leased premises. So it becomes, very critical to identify do we have operational control over that lease premise and accordingly then categorize that emission into scope 1 and 2 or scope 3. The other challenge that we face, again, I'm talking from a banking sector perspective, is the widespread physical presence. We are, fragmented, dispersed, present in many locations, and that itself causes a challenge in terms of data collation. So mechanisms have to be put in place so that the right data is being collated and used for calculating the carbon footprint. Because unless we measure correctly, we will not be able to have a correct roadmap for net zero. The third area of challenge is the carbon accounting itself. So for banks and FIs, financed emissions actually contributes at least 90% of the total emissions, unlike some of the industrial companies, manufacturing companies where scope one, scope two will be significant. For banks, actually, it is the financed emissions, which is the emissions from the lending and the investment portfolio that the banks hold. Currently, PCAF is the only global acceptable framework for calculating finance emissions. And when we really went into the details, we found that certain areas of lending, which is, I would say, typical to India, they have not yet been covered in the PCAF framework. So, as you might be aware, for banks, there are mandatory requirements under priority sector lending to advance agriculture loans. We have large portfolios of jewelry loans, education loans. We have credit card exposures. There are other types of unsecured lending and lending for consumption. Now, these kind of portfolios constitute almost one-fifth of the total advances of the banks. And unfortunately, this is not adequately addressed by the PCAF framework. So that is, some of the three top challenges that I would like to place here. In terms of opportunities, Amit already indicated that there are various estimates. One of the ones that we track internally is by one of the leading rating agencies, and they have put the number at almost like USD 12 trillion. Now, this is only for India to achieve its roadmap to net zero of 2070 as per the NDCs. And some of the sectors Amit mentioned, renewable energy, transportation, energy storage, green hydrogen, carbon capture, green buildings. These are all the sectors which are coming up, which are providing opportunities to banks and FIs. One more area which we have to look at are companies which are associated with these broad sectors. There are value chain partners in each of these areas, which will also need financing. And that's the reason why this number is mind-boggling. There are resources being allocated to R&D. New opportunities will come up. So I don't see a scarcity of opportunities. It is more about integrating sustainability into business strategy for banks, which will be the key. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Manish. I must say that was very detailed. Let's now focus on actionable strategies. So, businesses often wonder where to begin with and how to initiate the net zero journey, or rather, how to scale it up with all the efforts. Moreover, with technology advancing in, the possibilities for accurate carbon tracking, reporting, calculation, measurement, and decarbonization are also growing exponentially. So my question is for Amit. Amit, for organizations who are planning to initiate or who have just initiated their net zero journey, what could be the some initial steps to begin with?
Yeah, Abhishek. So I think Manish alluded to some of these. So let me be very specific. The most important aspect is the baseline emissions assessment. That is the basic building block based on which the actions are to be initiated. So once this is done, this actually provides a clear picture that where your emissions are coming. So Manish mentioned about scope 1, scope 2, and 3 categories. And from each of these, the companies then actually should define the science-based targets, as we call it, which are aligned with the global goals. So this is a very clear-cut methodology defined, and most of the guys in this industries and stakeholders know about it. Scope 1, 2, 3, science-based targets. But another important step, Abhishek, I'll say, is to engage with the stakeholders across the organization. Not only that is important, but also across supply chain. And that's where employees, suppliers, customers, they all of them play an important role in achieving these targets. So I'll say that start small but strategic. For example, energy efficiency, renewable, I mentioned about the renewable energy procurement earlier. It could be procurement from outside, or it could be even in-house or captive power plant, solar based captive power plant. There are various models which have emerged over it. Few companies have uh, location based procurement or location based kind of a captive power plant, or large conglomerates are setting up a group captive and then supplying power. So various models have emerged over a period of time. And people also look at the financial aspect, not only just the environmental aspect, emission aspect. And I think together that is creating the whole ecosystem around, I'll say. So this is the things have started happening and happening at a very large scale, which can generate momentum and also the wins going forward. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Amit. Great points. Actually, getting the baselining right and engaging with stakeholders is the most critical and crucial in this journey. Once you know where do you stand in terms of the baseline, then only you will be able to proceed with initiating the steps on the net zero. So this brings me to Debraj. Debraj, what in your opinion or how can businesses align their net zero strategies with ESG goals to create a value for all the stakeholders? As Amit mentioned, the three stakeholders, the regulatory community, the customer community, and the investor community.
Thanks, Abhishek, and great points. So, aligning net zero strategies with ESG goals begins with setting clear and measurable targets that are relevant to both the business and its stakeholders. To start, companies should conduct a materiality assessment to identify which ESG priorities matter most to their operations and to the people they serve. This ensures efforts are focused and create real impact. For example, one key focus area for many businesses is reducing emissions across the value chain, especially Scope 3, which cover indirect emissions from suppliers and customers. By tackling these, companies not only cut down their environmental footprint but also meet growing expectations from investors and consumers for sustainable practices and responsible sourcing. Another crucial area is employee engagement. Businesses can involve their workforce through green skilling programs or sustainability initiatives. This not only builds a sense of ownership among the employees, but also sparks innovation and creativity within the organization. And finally, integrating ESG with net zero shifts the perspective from sustainability being just a cost to viewing it as a driver of efficiency, innovation, and long term value. This alignment enables businesses to thrive while meeting stakeholder expectations and contributing to a sustainable future. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Debraj. Now let's hear from Manish. Manish, your organization, the ICICI Bank, has been on this journey. So, based on your experience, if you could elaborate on what has worked and what hasn't worked well in your path towards net zero.
So as Devraj mentioned, I think we have to start right from the materiality assessment and setting the tone from the top is very important. So at ICICI Bank, there has been a support always coming from the board. The tone from the top is clearly to align with the India's indices and the roadmap to net zero. So at least that gives us a clear vision on how we have to move forward. And given that direction, we have been taking baby steps. A lot of things which Devraj mentioned, engaging employees, really creating awareness on concepts of ESG is something that we have been doing. We ourselves in our ESG team, we have been trying to understand the concepts of emissions. We are all uh, going back to like B schools, opening up textbooks and trying to understand these concepts. So what is carbon neutrality? What is net zero? What are the various standards and frameworks? Amit mentioned about science-based targets, so SBTI, ISO, all these frameworks. What do they mean? What are the approaches? What is relevant for a banking company? In addition to that, we are doing pilots to identify data sources, and in case there are any information gaps, how do we really plug those gaps? We are implementing processes to ensure governance around data and information because gradually all this data will also get assured or audited. And again, it's more about getting on the right path to become net zero. So having taken these baby steps, having gained some of the confidence, ICICI Bank has set a target for becoming carbon neutral in its own operations by 2032. Some of the initiatives that we are taking include, first of all, trying to reduce. We are trying to follow the 4R principles of refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle in our own operations. So we are encouraging employees to really see how we can reduce some of the energy consumption. We are adopting renewable energy through on-site solar. We are contracting for green tariff. We are making use of energy efficient building design, so IGBC certifications. So currently, as per the ESG report of 31st March 2024, one third of our total premises, or sorry, one third of our total energy consumption is actually green. So these are some of the achievements that we have been able to do through these baby steps. Additionally, we are adopting green procurement. We are using recycled paper. There is a lot of focus on digitization of processes. One of the important areas which we feel is still an impediment to facilitate the achievement of net zero is the government policy initiatives. So that is a little slow to come by. That has to have clear direction. There have to be industry-specific regulations and incentives to really drive this journey. One of the important areas again is about scaling up access to green power. The regulations pertaining to electricity, whether it is generation, transmission, distribution, they vary from one state to another. Another challenge is to get information and data from our borrower companies, which will eventually help us in calculating the financed emissions. So these are some of the areas which we are working on. I think we will have to really look at how we can improve on our approaches. A critical area of development, in addition to the climate finance taxonomy, because that is very relevant for the banking sector, we are also keeping an eye on the framework for carbon credits and the gradual evolution of the Indian voluntary carbon market. Because without carbon offsets, net zero is not possible for banks, financial service companies. Over to you, Abhishek.
Sure, Manish. Thank you for those insights. In fact, I fully agree that to achieve a net zero, it has to be a consolidated joint effort from all departments of the organization. One department can't achieve it. It has to be a joint effort. Coming to the last thing, imperative thing which you just mentioned, technology. So technology has become a game changer in achieving net zero. And that takes me to Django. Django, what role does technology play in revolutionizing the way businesses track and manage their carbon emissions?
Thanks, Abhishek. Firstly, a warm good afternoon to all panelists and participants coming on a Tuesday afternoon for a forward-looking topic like this. We've all talked, in fact, the topic of this seminar itself is Roadmap to Net Zero. We're talking about journeys, pathways. I would like to use a small analogy. I'm sure all of us who are on this session this afternoon now accept that Google Maps has become a major part of our daily lives. And if you see, for any journey that we undertake now, when you want to start using a Google Map-like app, you need to know where you are today. That's what was alluded by Manish and Amit as well, baselining, knowing where you are. So getting a proper baseline done. And then as you're moving along, the path towards your end goal, just like Google Maps keeps analyzing, tracking, managing everything, you need technology to go on this journey. And why do you know that? I think it's a very apt analogy that you need a tech to go down this complex path. And why do you need that? At GovEVA, we had the opportunity to work with a lot of clients on this journey over the last 3-4 years. And this is their personal, private, I would say not personal, real life practical examples. Here are some of the challenges that people face and will face if they go on this journey. One is when you're talking about making your current baseline or the carbon ledger or the GHG ledger, and then keeping on updating it, calculating it, analyzing it. You need to deal with a very vast and complex set of data points. And those lie across different pockets of an organization and sometimes even outside, as was alluded. When you're doing scope 3, you have to go to your value chain upstream, downstream. In fact, our BRSR, which is quite a path-breaking Indian disclosure format, has now mandated our top 250 companies to go outside their boundaries. So complex data sets across different parts of your organization, inside, outside, and mostly residing in silos is one of the key challenges. Another one is even when you're doing all your calculations, ESG, sustainability, carbon being an emerging area, there are multiple emission factors, libraries, depending on your location, country, geography, kind of processes you use. These keep changing all the time as well. So multiple raw data sets, not always very reliable. So then you can use technologies like IoT to get data at source and then to keep on updating, calculating them. And more importantly, as was mentioned by my fellow panelists earlier, sooner or later, especially if you're going on a net zero journey, the audit and assurance angle also needs to come in. So not only do you have to deal with a complex set of data points across different silos inside and outside your organization, but you also need to ensure that it's absolutely clean, as accurate as possible so that it can be audited in the future or right now itself. And the third major challenge which our clients are facing is as you do day-to-day business now in this world, which is very sustainability, green, climate challenge driven, your stakeholder demands are constantly changing, and I will narrate a few of them. And they also come quite unexpectedly at times. So, for example, we are dealing with a large global supply chain logistics transportation company. Today, and they being in transportation logistics, they become the scope 3 for a lot of their marquee clients across the globe. Today, their clients for this large logistics customer of ours not only are demanding that this company delivers the goods on time in an efficient, clean, safe, and cost-effective manner, but for every docket, every product, every ton of cargo that moves, they also want to know the carbon footprint. So there's a customer demand which is driving this. And to achieve that kind of scale, repeatability, you just cannot think of doing anything other than with technology. Another example I can give you of something coming out of the blue and hitting customers, although it was kind of a planned thing. Another customer that we deal with makes products out of steel, and the end product then gets exported to the European market. Very recently, they started facing questions and requirements from the European customers around the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or the carbon tax, where to move the consignment to a favored old customer, which has been there for a long time. Today, not only the product has to be great, but a CBAM disclosure report has to go with every product. So customer demands for, ad hoc or even regular disclosures are becoming very frequent. Given all of that, all of those challenges, and if you look at the amount of transactions that we are doing, there is no other way but to do it with technology. Now, again, in technology, one is the whole data calculation, management, analysis, real-time aspect of it. The other is the collection part of it, which is where things like IoT devices, smart meters, etc., can go a great distance in helping you collect clean, auditable data. And then as you go across your boundaries to your upstream, downstream value chain, things like blockchain and others become very important. So all in all, just to come back to my origin analogy, today, just like most of us can't think of embarking on any journey without a Google Maps or a similar app to have a safe, efficient, and quick journey, you possibly couldn't do your net zeros without tech at different stages of it. Thanks, Amit. Back to you.
Thank you, Jangu.
Jangu, I'll just add, sorry, Abhishek, I'll just add to what
Yes,
Jangu
yes,
said.
please go
You
ahead.
mentioned about Google Maps. In fact, today, Google Maps also gives you, which is the most green journey. You'll find a green leaf coming, when you suddenly choose your locations. So they are also being conscious and they are also driving a message that this is important.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Manish. So, Jango, those were interesting insights. Digital tools indeed enhance the accuracy and transparency, which are critical to an effective reporting. The scope of error gets reduced when it's shifted to digital as compared to a manual calculation. There's another challenge we would like to address to our panelists, which is regulations and the market expectations, which are again evolving, changing very rapidly. Let's explore on how businesses can prepare for these. Amit, in your opinion, what are the key regulatory developments businesses in India should focus on?
Quite an important point, Abhishek. And we have earlier mentioned about the CBAM, but there are domestic as well. Let me start with the BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. So that's the regulatory landscape. And it has evolved rapidly, I'll say, that most of the industries are aware about it. There are regulations and also the compliance part of it. And it is evolving rapidly, I'll say, to align with the global sustainability standards to a large extent. Hmm. Second, CBAM, Django also mentioned, I also mentioned earlier. So CBAM is applicable, although we know that the government of India has approached WTO, they are opposing it, but at the same time, this is a reality. And let me tell, all those who are here today that the EU is the starting point. You will find more and more developed economies, whatever you name it, whether it is domestic protectionism or they are serious about the carbon as well, or a combination of both. But this is a reality. This will take place, and there are solutions. The industries are grappling with it. They have approached many technology suppliers, also people like us. We have been supporting many industries in this regard, but it is not just confined to industry. There are standards which are set for airlines. Now somebody who is flying into the territory of EU will have to follow those. So this is a reality, and more countries, as I said, are going to do this. Third is that increasing investor scrutiny, right? I'm not saying, I'm not putting it directly as a regulator, but this is quite an important aspect. And because this is happening, so the ESG focused funds, and in fact, I'll say that even ADB, for example, Asian Development Bank, they want to call themselves as a climate finance bank, not just a development bank anymore. They want to call themselves as a climate finance bank, of Asia. So ESG focused funds, ADBs of this world, World Bank, multilateral, bilateral, everybody, including. So they want a robust and verified emission data based on which they would like to fund going forward. We all know most of these development banks have stopped funding the coal-based power plants, for example, right? Or which is not clean, so to say. They have already stopped it. Now, they have gone one step ahead. It is not just that the project is clean, but they are depending on the verified emissions data. So that is the second part of it, which essentially means that we are prioritizing readiness for third party audits and certifications to meet these expectations of these banks. And lastly, I'll say that preparing for these regulatory shifts, this requires a proactive approach. While whether it deals with the developing capabilities for real-time data tracking, or investment on the emission reduction technology, which we have discussed before, or partnership, which value chains to align with. I will also say that, and Manish mentioned about it, the domestic carbon trading market is going to evolve very soon. We have worked on this with Bureau of Energy Efficiency. The rules and regulations are being defined. There is a exchange IEX which has been finalized. The power this there is an authority who is going to have this registry. So everything is in place. This has got a mandate under the parliament, and the Energy Conservation Act was modified accordingly. So it's just a matter of time. Most probably next year you will find that this is live and kicking, and I think that will be the further give a fillip to industries, those who want to make an investment into it, take benefit out of it. Plus, at the same time, an important regulation is on the anvil. Over to you, Abhishek.
Sure. Thank you, Amit. Manish, building on that, one question from you. How have the banks adapted to shifting regulations and increasing investor demands related to sustainability now? So there's ever increasing demand both on the investor side and the regulator side. Customer would not so much get into those as of now because most of your customers would be individual customers. But from a investors and regulatory community side, those demands, how has the bank adapted themselves?
So, Abhishek, you will note that most banks and NBFCs, I'm talking about the large NBFCs here, they have established a dedicated ESG sustainability team. They use those terminology interchangeably. And their entire focus is to have an appropriate governance framework so that they can align and manage the evolving regulatory frameworks and investor expectations. Now, from a banking sector perspective, there are two main regulators. One is SEBI, which is the capital markets regulator for the listed entities, and then we have the Reserve Bank of India. What we are observing is that these two regulators have been actively engaging with the industry participants to develop the regulations and the reporting disclosure requirements relating to ESG and climate risk management. So there is usually a window for public consultation before the regulation is notified. The regulators are also aware of the challenges and therefore they are providing a glide path for compliance so that companies get adequate time to understand and prepare for the various regulatory requirements. So this centralized team actually plays a very important role. That is how banks are preparing themselves. SEBI's mandate on BRSR for the top 1,000 listed entities is also helping us meet some of the investor expectations around disclosures. So while the most popular framework is the TCFD framework, which is the Task Force on Climate related financial disclosures, but SEBI is much more broader. It is about ESG parameters, and it addresses a lot of the questions which usually investors ask. Gradually, the focus of the regulator is to improve the quality of the disclosures, assurance requirements, so that the users of the report are confident about the authenticity and the accuracy of the data being reported. Many companies have already started publishing an ESG report or sustainability report, which is aligned with the international frameworks like the Global Reporting Initiative (GRI). They are making disclosures to meet requirements of international agencies like MSCI, DGSI, CDP, Forest 500. This in turn actually helps to meet the investor expectations. Investors have been reaching out and engaging directly with the ESG teams within the banks to really get insights into what is being, or rather going beyond what is being published as part of the ESG report or the disclosure which are being made on the website. So the efforts are actually happening from both sides. And I think that is a very positive attitude of the investors. The regulators from their end are also reiterating the need for capacity building. We have several advisory firms which are themselves building their capability and preparing themselves to help the companies in the journey. So I would say that the various participants in this entire ecosystem are taking a collaborative approach, considering that this is a new area. Over to you.
Thank you, Manish. The practical insights, yes. So we can now shift to the COP29, the recently concluded COP29. Debraj, what were the most significant takeaways from the COP29 which Indian businesses could use? And we would also love to hear from our audience their thoughts. So requesting everyone, please share your key takeaways from the COP29, whatever you're aware of in the chat box. Debraj, over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. So COP29 highlighted the pressing need for global cooperation to meet the 1.5 degree Celsius target, with a growing emphasis on private sector accountability. For Indian businesses, I would say that the key takeaways included number one, the new commitments to climate financing. They were announced, creating potential opportunities for Indian companies to explore green funding for their net zero projects. However, businesses need to navigate challenges like access to funds and meeting stringent eligibility criteria. Second would be that the spotlight on integrating natural ecosystems into climate strategies is particularly relevant for India, especially in agriculture and renewable energy. While these solutions have potential, implementing them at scale will require significant planning and investment. And third, the COP29 emphasized importance of shared platforms and data transparency. This creates an opportunity for Indian companies to adopt advanced technologies for emissions tracking, and it also means that they must invest in interoperable systems and upskilling teams. Now, while these developments highlight significant opportunities, there were some disappointments as well, such as insufficient financing and missed chances to set strong frameworks for fossil fuel phase out. These insights essentially underline that Indian businesses can't just focus on meeting local regulatory requirements to stay competitive globally, as we just heard all the panelists say. Indian businesses must proactively align with international standards while addressing practical challenges on the ground. Thanks. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Devraj. Now let's go back to Django. Django, did you notice any technology trends or innovations at the COP29? I mean, with light to or with focus towards something which could shape the sustainability landscape?
Yeah, Abhishek, all of us were eagerly and passionately tracking COP29. I'll come to the tech part in a bit, but I would just like to give 1 minute perspective of my own on the COPs. I think of late, the expectations of all of us are going sky high what COPs can deliver, and hence sometimes the resultant outcomes are a little disappointing. But the being a sustainability ESG champion and making a business out of it, the way I look at it is that if year after year, and we have reached the 29th COP, if we can get all the key countries and all the key movers and shakers and powers that be at the countries into one place every year to discuss an agenda, it definitely must be top of the mind for everyone in the world. So I just feel that the very fact that we have these COPs regularly with great participation is itself a testimony to the importance of what we're facing. So that's my two bit before I come to the tech part. On the tech part, this year it was very heartening actually that at COP29, there are actually separate sessions and breakouts which focused only on technology. A lot of discussions happened over there. But, you know, if you look at it right now, the flavors, top two flavors in terms of excitement around the world are AI and then climate related risks and challenges. And that's what got discussed in these breakouts as well. And more practically, how AI, ML can be used to do modeling around emission reductions. If you're missing 1.5, everyone knows that. So how do you now model for a world beyond that, 1.6, 2.5, whatever? So a lot of discussions around using tech to more accurately model the outcomes of missing or attaining targets was a lot of source of discussion. Another, I think, key trend which was I saw in those tech breakouts was around integrity and reliability of data, and how technology, again, around IoT and others, and AI can be used in that direction. And the third and the most important one, I think, was about harmonizing the multiple reporting standards which are there, which is also something. So the COPS is all about countries and countries doing things, but there are sub agendas which involve corporations and enterprises. And in those tech breakout sessions where the focus was on enterprises, there's a lot of discussion around how going forward the world should move towards more harmonious common disclosure standards. But to your point, it was very heartening to see separate breakout sessions, discussions around tech, AI, etc., and how it can help the overall planet journey towards net zero world. Back to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Django. So we have some good questions which have been posted by our audiences. Uh, Organizers, do we have time? Matlab, can we take at least 3 to 4 questions?
Abhishek, we have 12 minutes. So I think we can take 2 or 3 questions.
Sure. So then let me start with Amit. Amit, in your opinion, how can the government and the private sector collaborate to accelerate the transition to a net zero economy in India?
Well, I think the governments typically what we have seen in a new area is that government to break the chicken and egg situation, they come out with the policy and the regulatory landscape is defined. So the government has more or less, I'll say, have done it, except few some changes here and there will continue to happen, except for the carbon trading scheme. More or less everything is in place. Then second and the most important part is played by these IDAs, the banks, and the financial institutions. Manish is there on this panel in the panel. So they are the second one to give confidence to the end user, that is the customers or the industries, so to say, in this case, that we are there. Now that the policy is well defined, now that this is something which is workable, both from financial perspective, both from desirable perspective, as we discussed, that all the three stakeholders are aligned, then I think the industries, so that's the cocktail: government, then the funding, IDA, banks, financial institutions, and finally the borrower, those who are going to implement it. There is one more aspect, and that is the vendors or the supply chain aspect, which we discussed, scope 1 to scope 3. So, this together becomes the whole ecosystem. How this has panned out, I will say energy efficiency, renewable energy, most of the things are in place, right? Even from the ESG perspective, regulations, they are in place. Some tweaking here and there, as I said, will be required, but that's there. Now, what is required is for the industries, for these stakeholders to take action to implement it on the ground and make India, this net zero by 2070 a reality. And I'll put my, put out my hat and say that even before 2070 it is possible. We all know 2030 NDC targets. India is on the cusp of, achieving it much before that.
Sure. Thank you, Amit. Jamgo, coming to you. So while we discuss that technology could play an important role in digitizing the entire journey, also doing a baselining and then helping organizations know where do they stand in terms of their emissions. But ESG, sustainability, decarbonization, that's always coupled with some cost associated to it. And I have seen many corporates do not get into that direction because of the cost restrictions. Now, in your opinion, how can small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, India effectively contribute to the net zero, considering the cost implications and the digitization?
I think, as Amit mentioned, and a lot of us have discussed on this session today, it is an overall effort which everyone has to put in. Now, that sounds like a very holistic, solving world hunger kind of problem. But I would say that how would MSMEs, SMEs, mid-sized companies come to the party? I think whether they like it or not, different stakeholders, including the larger companies who procure from them, will pull them into this. So ESG and sustainability is both a risk and an opportunity for companies, both in the mid and the large size space. Risk because you risk losing some of your key marquee customers if you don't adapt to what they want from you. So you have to decarbonize and bring down all the things that you're doing so that your scope 1 and 2 reduces your buyer scope 3 kind of thing. Secondly, there are a whole bunch of incentives which regulators, governments, and even your buyers in terms of premium are giving. So if you scan the horizon, there are a lot of opportunities which come with going down the path of sustainability net zero. So if you just look at the cost side of the equation, it can be very daunting. But if you wear an innovative hat, look at the opportunities which come out of it, the premiumization, the better, easier, and cheaper access to capital, all of that makes it your journey a lot more smoother to go down that path. And I think we are beginning to see that as well. We have quite a few clients who are unlisted, mid-size, who are on this journey.
Sure. Thank you, Jamgo.
Abhishek, if I may just add,
Sure.
I think that what is also important and imperative is these companies, mid-sized companies especially, they also reach out and take the effort to really understand what's happening in this space. What I see is that they expect the larger companies to really approach them, do the hand-holding part. It works actually both ways.
Sure, Manish. So, Manish, my next question is to you only. And you mentioned that you already initiated the net zero journey, right? And I'm very sure there were challenges, especially ICICI Bank being present across the length and breadth of this country, multiple branches, multiple stakeholders, multiple resources, multiple people, right? So, and this indeed was a cultural shift, right? From doing what was kind of a routine work to shifting towards a net zero. So, what were the challenges which were faced by you from a cultural shift in the organization, and how did you overcome them?
So the biggest shift, culture shift was that we have to tell people that what I'm talking is not banking. That was a big thing. It's a new concept. So people, the first question that they ask is, what is the correlation between banking and ESG? So our entire focus actually has been to really create awareness. And again, we started right from the top so that the messaging from the top is appropriate. We have conducted a lot of training sessions now. Session on ESG is integrated into the induction of new employees. We conduct bespoke sessions for the business teams to make them aware of the developments. We actually do e-mailers across the organization. If you visit some of our premises, our large offices, there are posters. So this is something that we are trying to embed as part of the ethos in the organization. And we believe that individual action will actually help the organization actions.
Sure. Thank you, Manish. Amit, my next question is for you. Uh, the government had recently launched the National Mission on Green Steel. If you could throw some light on what does it say?
Yeah, so I think this has just come out. India probably, I'll say, Abhishek, is the first country to define green steel. And if I can give some data, the mission says that CO2 equivalent emission intensity of less than 2.2 tons of CO2 per ton of finished steel. That is the definition. Everybody in the industry was struggling as to how the green steel, be defined. So for the first time, the mission actually has defined. And quite importantly, they have also given star rating. Now, star rating, just like, if you buy, say, air conditioner or a refrigerator and there is 1 star to 5 star. So just like that, this will be reviewed every 3 years, of course, but there is a 5 star green rated steel where the intensity has to be lower than 1.6 tons, for 4 star between 1.6 to 2, and then 3 star 2 to 2.2. Now, the government, as part of the institutional structure, has also defined that NIST, which is National Institute of Secondary Steel Technology, they will be the nodal agency for this, for basically for MRV, measurement, reporting, and verification. Now, why this is important and what the government is doing? They are saying that 15,000 crore Indian rupees that will be provided as an incentive. I'm sure this will come in the budget as well, right? Now, because just now the ministry has defined, so you'll find some provision in the budget, and that will be part of the upcoming green steel policy. Now, why this is important? We discussed about the CBAM earlier. So, to counter CBAM, there was some incentive, some program, some initiative was required by the government also, and that is why I think this will fulfill that objective as well. And secondly, green steel. Everybody was discussing green steel. What is green steel? So that definition also has come about based on this. There are further, the PAT program is there, green hydrogen policy. See, green hydrogen is going to play an important role in steel, and that's where this hard to abate sector, few of them like steel, they will have to adopt green hydrogen. So there are many elements of this green mission, this mission which has been launched by the government of India. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Amit. So we have many more questions, but we don't have time. Thank you, all our panelists, for your invaluable insights and to our audience for your active participation. We have got your questions, but due to the paucity of time, we'll have to provide the responses of our panelists to you through your registered email IDs. I would like to end the session now, but by quickly summarizing the key takeaways. All the facts shared during our webinar and the air quality outside, especially in Delhi, as on date, clearly indicate that net zero is need for the hour. Although a necessity, it also opens up avenues for innovation. Challenges like increased scrutiny by investors, heavy dependence on conventional sources of energy, which is coal, heavy financial burden, and technological gaps are creating roadblocks in the net zero journey. Actionable strategies like baselining carbon measurement, which is critical, aligning with ESG and global goals, and leveraging technology will definitely help us increase our momentum towards a net zero. We would also need to prepare for evolving regulations and market demands by staying proactive and innovative. We should be prepared for scrutiny by regulatory agencies and should be transparent in our initiatives and disclosures. We have heard about the commendable efforts taken by ICICI Bank, Manish and his team, like setting up their emission inventory, adopting renewable energy, and adopting green procurement practices. Insights from the COP29 highlights the global urgency and technological solutions driving change. So that's it from my side. I would request our audience to feel free to reach out to us with their further questions. Thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. Stay tuned for the third series. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, good day.
Good day.
Thank you.